Hey, I'm TV and Movie Guy on Instagram, and I'll be reviewing all of the MCU movies and TV shows leading up to the new movie Deadpool and Wolverine in July. I hope I'll be able to make all of the reviews before then, but we'll see. I'll be watching the MCU in release order so that anyone that hasn't watched before can watch along with me. I won't be talking about movies or shows until I get to them, and we'll only discuss any of the shows or movies up to that point. I'll be reviewing them assuming that you're either familiar with the movie or had just watched it. I won't be going scene by scene, basically retelling the show or movie. And at that point, if you want something like that, you might as well just watch the show or movie. So today I'll be reviewing The Incredible Hulk. And if you don't want to be spoiled, then what are you doing watching a spoiler review? Feel free to stop watching and come back when you do see it. Just a reminder, I've never worked on any engagement or counted any votes or ballots for any award shows. The opinions in this review are my own and don't reflect that of any of my employers. And with that, allons-y. Okay, so with The Incredible Hulk, in my first review, I said that early on in a franchise, those are the movies you're most likely going to see the most. And that's not the case with this one. I feel like this movie is like forgotten about in the MCU, and it's almost not even considered or known to be one in the MCU. And with that said, I've only actually seen this one 2 or 3 times, including this watch. And so, my overall review for this movie is that it's kind of disappointing and that it seems more like a stereotypical superhero movie before the MCU came around. And which is kind of a bummer coming off the high of Iron Man, but they kind of it's not like they took Iron Man and then made this movie. They were almost made consecutively at the same time, and they came out within almost a month of each other in theaters. So you couldn't exactly do a whole lot to take what Iron Man did well and kind of re-implement that. So it could have been where they were just trying to do 2 separate things and see what worked out best with audiences, and then kind of kick off the MCU based on which one did better. So, with that, I'll explain the movie in detail, not in detail, but I'll explain it to you like you're 5, just to kind of give you a quick synopsis. So, Bruce Banner is a scientist that experimented on himself to test radiation, and he accidentally absorbed that gamma radiation. Since then, he's been on the run due to hurting Betty Ross, his girlfriend, and her dad, General Ross, who's in the military and tracking him, which is why Bruce is on the run. So he's found in Brazil and has an incident and runs back to the U.S. to try and find the data that he hopes will be able to cure him of being the Hulk. General Ross turns a soldier, Emil Blonsky, into a performance-enhanced soldier, and then that super soldier to take on the Hulk. Blonsky gets more of that serum from the military and another scientist, and he becomes the villain Abomination. Then Hulk and the Abomination duke it out in the end. So that's the movie in a nutshell. What am I doing in a nutshell? Get out of here. Austin Powers. Good franchise as well. I would recommend that. So the best and worst scene from this movie, it's kind of difficult. There weren't a whole lot of great scenes. There's a lot of bad ones. And then so the best I would have to say is the action sequence at the university. It was cool seeing like a longer scene with the Hulk on full display and not like hidden in the shadows or anything, and just leaving it to be something to view until like the very end of the movie, in which you almost hardly ever see him, like typical monster movies. But yeah, I don't like it when movies take the full movie to show you a monster. It's such a build up, and usually it doesn't pay off when they finally do show them. But I'm glad they gave us like a lot of screen time showing the actual Hulk and put in the time and effort to do all that CGI. The initial sequence of when he has an incident and the Hulk's out in the factory, I mean, you can have that in monster movies because that's great. It's great tension building and builds the anticipation of when you do see it. But like I said, those other monster movies, they just take forever and almost the whole movie, and then they finally show you, and I don't think it's worth it generally. Um, and yeah, but that wasn't the case with this, and it definitely paid off in my mind to kind of have him hidden in those shadows in the factory, and then the rest of the movie you're kind of getting the Hulk on full display. And then the worst scene I thought was anytime Betty and Bruce were on screen together. Their dialogue and the breathiness of the conversations are just terrible. And they just did not work for me at all whenever they shared the screen. And yeah, it was bad. One of the worst like chemistries on screen I think I've ever seen. And then again, like with it being I think it's a bad movie. And with bad movies, there's just a lot of bad lines, and it's kind of hard to find a good or best or worst line. Well, it's not hard to find a worst line, but, well, there's a lot of contention for it. There's competition, so maybe it is. But for best line, yeah, it was tough. So the best line I thought was, I've been more curious than cautious, and that served me pretty well. And that's when Mr. Blue is saying that to Bruce. And I don't know, it's just a good line because, I don't know, there wasn't a whole lot to choose from, but it was kind of, I don't know, with very few to choose from, I thought it was the only one that really stood out. And then the worst line I thought was Blonsky saying that he feels like a monster when he's about ready to take on the Hulk for the third time. A lot of Blonsky's lines didn't work for me. They were trying to give him like cool lines, something cool to say, but they were more misses than anything, I think. But yeah, no one's like, it was prompted by the questions like, how do you feel? And he says, I feel like a monster, like ready to go. And I don't know, it just did not work for me at all. And then best and worst joke from the movie. The best joke I thought was when after he hulked out in Brazil, he went to some sort of flea market, and he was clothes shopping, and he was looking at a pair of pants, and he held them up to a larger person, seeing if the pants would stretch out to be what he would need if he were to Hulk out again. And it was just funny seeing him hold up the pair of pants next to the person. And I mean, yeah, there weren't a whole lot of great jokes, and for the most part, they weren't trying to make a whole lot of jokes. It wasn't that type of movie. And then the worst joke, I think, was Betty Ross yelling at a cabbie and Bruce saying that he could help her with her anger. He knows some good techniques. Just the flow of it. It was a bad setup. It wasn't a bad setup for a joke, but it was just done poorly and poorly worded, I thought. And then loose threads. So this segment I'll just keep bringing up every single time there's a loose thread and remind you of all the loose threads up until this point, so including Iron Man and Hulk in this one. So the loose threads I got from Hulk were Mr. Blue's head expanding when some of the blood he was infusing the Abomination with kind of poured into an open wound he had, and they didn't touch on that scene or go back to Mr. Blue in any way, so it's a loose thread that can be tied up at some point. And then at the end, it looked like Bruce had control of when he can turn into the Hulk, or at least induce it if he wants. Not sure whether things won't set him off and he's able to stop it. But it seems like he can ramp up if he needs to. And then another loose thread being the last scene with Tony Stark saying they're putting a team together. And that's where this Marvel Cinematic Universe really begins. Because up till that point, you didn't really think that the two movies were related. And there were other hints showing some connections. So, like, seeing the Shield and Stark Industries logos, but they were like quick flashes on the screen and weren't apparent. So seeing Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Tony Stark, in this movie just cemented like, hey, they're going to go together. All these movies should kind of like in some way tie to each other. And then this movie didn't really clear up any of the loose threads from Iron Man. So, and those were like, what's S.H.I.E.L.D., what's more of S.H.I.E.L.D., and technically General Ross is a part of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's a team on S.H.I.E.L.D., but you mostly got the feeling that they were just military, not exactly the same as what S.H.I.E.L.D. seemed like with Agent Phil Coulson in Iron Man. And then they didn't expand on what the Avengers Initiative is in Hulk, so that's still a loose thread from Iron Man. And then cameos from this movie. So one of the few that isn't just Stan Lee, because Stan Lee did have a cameo in this one, and he was the reason kind of they found Bruce in Brazil, and he just drank that pop. But I think the better cameo from this movie was Lou Ferrigno as the security officer on the campus, and he lets Bruce Banner into the science lab with a free pizza. So it was a great cameo of the original Incredible Hulk, and one of the few cameos that won't be Stan Lee. So I thought it was a good one. All right, and being that I haven't watched this movie a whole lot, and there's not a whole lot of great lines from it, there's not a whole lot of referenced lines from it that I hear in day-to-day culture, and nothing that I really make from it, so nothing referenceable for me. And then I didn't get any questions through my email or on the comments, so I don't really have any questions from this movie other than those loose threads, just to kind of like, all right, let's see what they do with that. All right, and then everything else that I thought from the movie. The opening montage I didn't like. Well, like, it was good, but I think it just needed to be expanded. It was so packed with things that I would have liked to see them spend time on. So, like, seeing how the Hulk became the Hulk in more depth and just have some conversation around it. It would have been something cool to see because, I mean, there were 2 other Hulk movies that had come out recently before this one. So I think in 2003, which was about 5 years before this one, and I think again in 97. Yeah, they were made. Yeah, but it would have been nice to see what the MCU's version of this would have been. And who knows, they might like try to return to it at some point in the future, but we'll see. The whole movie, it felt like you were just trying to catch up because of that opening montage where you had no idea what was, like, you didn't get in-depth details of it. So it almost the movie started in the middle of a movie and you were just trying to catch up. And it was hard to do until they fed you the exposition. Hello, exposition. Again, another Austin Powers reference. How about that? But yeah, sometimes those reveals throughout the movie are worth it, but it just didn't work for me in this one. They got some big name actors in this one though. So like Tim Roth, like he's a great actor, great pedigree, and William Hurt, I know he's the old head, and he's got a rap sheet, I'm sure, long with acting credits, but like for such a young, nascent MCU franchise, it's incredible they were able to get them. Next one would be Ty Burrell, because how can you see him and not think Phil Dunphy whenever you see him first? Like, it was just funny seeing him. But he was almost wasted. He was a nothing character in the movie, and he was only used for like one plot point to keep the movie moving forward, which was a terrible use of him. but him with along with other characters in the movies just didn't provide a whole lot of depth. And I only noticed this after watching the deleted scenes, and I will say there are a lot of good scenes they cut out from, and you should really look at the deleted scenes to kind of see what this movie could have been. I think it provided the depth that was lacking in the movie. Uh, it would have made the movie better if some of those scenes were in the movie. I'd recommend watching those if you get the chance. They're on Disney Plus, and likely on any DVD copy you have. With that lack of depth in mind, it seemed to me that the movie is very much single-minded, and that the main storyline is really just the only thing going on. There's not much else. It's just one long big chase scene for the whole movie. And this is what I was getting at with my overall review, saying that this seemed more like a classical superhero movie where it's a lot of action, one main plot line, a lot of attention put on to a like romance aspect or just forcing a romance. And it just didn't feel different like Iron Man did. It just felt like the same old kind of superhero movie. As for like a bright spot in the movie, I really enjoyed Mr. Blue's character. His lines of dialogue are interesting. He's the one working with Bruce's blood, trying to find a cure, and he's also like, or he was trying to abate one Hulk out moment. Well, he was only able to abate one Hulk out moment. He was trying to find the cure, but he was only able to suppress the one. He pushed Blonsky over the edge to being the Abomination, and he was doing all sorts of things with Bruce's blood through various experiments, and with all the blood samples he was able to get from Mr. Green, Bruce. And then we did get that moment where his head was expanding with that serum that he injected into the Abomination, Emil Blonsky. So he might be something to look out for going forward. And then this one didn't have an after scenes or after the credits scene. But I heard that the Tony Stark scene was actually supposed to be after the credits, but they moved it up to before then. Likely just because they wanted to make sure people saw that, and kind of it almost played spoiler to be like, hey, okay, this is something different. This is something like they're building on. They want to make it kind of like cohesive. It's not just an Iron Man franchise and then a Hulk franchise. It's one huge universe, the MCU. And then with that, I'll go to my rating system. So I generally do kind of tiers and use about the same words for each of those tiers whenever I'm reviewing them. This is the same system I use for all the shows and movies I review, and there are 5 tiers. And I just added a 5th, really, because I was thinking about it after watching what I know to be a bad movie, and I'm like, I said other things were bad, that they are not that bad, so I just created a new one, which makes it a good 5-star system, I guess, that I should, but I like tiers. Levels, Jerry. Seinfeld, another one. There we go. So, yeah, I won't break down each tier saying that this movie is number 1, 2, or 3 in that tier to compare them. I just think it's hard to say which is better because they're either good or bad for different reasons and for certain things and not others. So I'll just put them on a tier and rank them that way. So the first tier being like grade or any variation on that word. So break out your thesaurus. What's another word for thesaurus? I think that's a reference. I think that might be a Groucho line in one of his movies. I'll have to check that out. So I didn't rank Iron Man last time, so I'll do that this time along with The Incredible Hulk. Iron Man, I would say, is good. For the rest of my tiers, so like great being the first in any variation. Second is good. Third is okay. Fourth, which I just created, is like, I don't like it. So like, I'm not going to call it bad, but I just don't like it. It wasn't for me. And then the last is bad, or any variation on that word. So since I didn't rank Iron Man, I'll say that it was good. It was captivating, good origin story, got to know the characters well, and great. Great might be more of a subjective kind of thing, where it's like very like personal to me, where I think what I'm watching is amazing. And that's generally how things are with everybody, is, and you'll find this throughout all of these movies and TV shows, that it's similar to comic books. Like, you attach yourself to certain characters over others, and it's almost gotten to the point where the MCU is more comic book based, where some movies are going to do it for you, others are not, and they're making them that way, which is okay. And so there's going to be some that just don't hit me and are going to be in that I don't like it, but other people are going to be thinking, oh, that should be on the great tier. What are you talking about? It's just because they are finally tailoring these to specific people, and not so much for the general audience en masse. So Iron Man, I would put on that good tier, so 4 stars for me. The Incredible Hulk, you can probably assume from all that I've said, it's on that bad level. It's not much of a story, just a lot of running and chasing. Didn't get a lot from the characters in the movie. If the deleted scenes were in there, it might have made it okay, but the fact they left those scenes out confused me, since that was more interesting than what was in the movie, I thought. So if I didn't see the deleted scenes, I might say the movie was okay, but seeing that what they took out was so much better than what I thought was in the movie, it just downgraded it to bad for me. And yeah, so that's all I had. Again, feel free to ask questions or leave comments. So in the comments section, or email them to me at tvandmovieguy.productions@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at tvandmovieguy, where I review TV shows and movies. No way. We landed on the moon. Dumb and Dumber. Sweet. But yeah, so short reviews and on are more than just the MCU can be found on my Instagram page. So I'm only doing these types of reviews for the MCU right now, but still watching other stuff in between MCU viewings. So for my next review on the MCU, it will be Iron Man 2. Yeah. There is... Yeah, I guess that kind of rhymed. A little poem for you. Scrubs. Yeah, so then there's also something called a Marvel's one-shot, and I'll also talk a little bit about that one titled The Consultant, and that's on Disney+. So feel free to watch that as well. Well, see ya.